Welcome to Founded on Purpose. I'm your host, Katie McBratney, and this season we're focused all about after the exit. Today we're talking with Amelia Lin, who co-founded Honeycomb in 2018 and led the company as its CEO to acquisition by Ello in 2024. She's also the co-founder of the nonprofit VC-backed Moms, and we're going to get into both of them today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
You have such an interesting story. All of our guests do. But what I really appreciate about how you share it is you think about not just sharing your authentic journey, but how other people can learn practical tips from it. And that's what I'm hoping to get into today. Season one, we all had the same 8 questions of every guest. And so I want to start with the question that led every episode of season one. In what word, what's your purpose? And then how did that guide your journey to starting a company and the exit decision?
Oh, that's so good. I think there's one thing, I'll maybe answer it in two different ways. I think there's what motivates me on a day-to-day basis, which I think has been very, very consistent over time and has been the same answer for a very, very long time, even as I've gone through a lot of different careers, because I didn't start out in tech. I really didn't. And then I guess the part two of that will be, what do I see as my purpose going forward, which I think has also been true for a long time, but feels more crystallized now. I might not have been able to express it quite as well if you'd asked me, 5 years ago. So I think for number one, like what motivates me on a day-to-day basis, I've always loved building new things with other people who are excited about building them. Like really, I used to work in science research in research labs, and that sounds to like a lot of people of very different, but it's the exact same motivation. We were working on really cool cutting edge technology. It was and so in funny ways, to me, it actually feels very similar to what you do at a startup. You're not just taking a machine that's already working and figuring out how to make it run just a little bit better. You're trying to create something that doesn't exist, but you think should exist, and you think the world would be really awesome if it existed, and you're doing that with other people who are excited about it. So that's really what gets me out of bed every day. It's what brings me a lot of joy, and what energizes me. So that's part one. Part two is maybe the bigger purpose. So this takes me to a hypothetical that my partner Kier and I were talking about years ago, which is this imaginary scenario. There are a lot of people talk about at some point of, okay, pretend you're like a billionaire and whatever, money is no
Yes.
object, and you're retired. And what are you doing, right? Like, what are you doing after everything, whatever. You don't have to worry about money, you don't have to worry about stability. So, um, I'll give Kier's answer, then I'll give my answer. Kier's answer was that Kier's a software engineer by trade, and he was like, I would like to teach, maybe I would teach people to code. He's like, maybe I could figure out how to be like a substitute teacher or something. I want to teach people to code. He loves, loves, loves coding. And then my answer was, I was like, I think I would want to find a way to give back to the founder community. I was like, I want to give back to the startup ecosystem. Like this industry and I think of it really as an ecosystem. I use that word a lot, has given me so much. I'm so grateful to it. Like I absolutely love my job, my career. This industry has given me so many opportunities and opened doors for me when it didn't have to open those doors. And I just have had such a fun time in it. And I would love to enable that for other people, help other people who are earlier on that journey. And I was like, that's what I want to spend all my free time with, is like finding a way to give back to the ecosystem and like supporting the next generation of startups and founders. So, very, very linked to what I do now with VC backed
Yeah.
moms. And so it's so funny because I don't think when we started VC backed moms, I don't think it occurred in my head that it was remotely related to that really big pie in the sky kind of dream. But that to me does feel like absolutely kind of a like a life purpose.
Totally tracks to the roles that you have now. It's so yeah, the through line is so clear. It's so interesting how hindsight and even, like, those questions, those hypotheticals, because I was doing the same thing, like, "Oh, what if we won the lottery? What would we do?"
Right.
And then I'm like, "Oh, no,
Right.
wait, I can start living that life now," like, smaller choices. I think I posted about it on LinkedIn about, like, we don't have to wait until we hopefully win the lottery, or the other assumption is that your company got acquired, so you're living that life now where money is no object and, all of these things, which part of the reason that I wanted to focus on after the exit for this season was like, yes, some people, that is their reality. Most people, it's life changing in different ways. And
Yeah.
kind of peel back the curtain on the reality of that. I want to dig into something you said a bit about the doors that have been open for you. And in previous interviews and podcasts you've done, you've talked about how important access to especially education and technology have been in your life. Tell us a bit
Yeah.
more about that.
Yeah. So, and I think this really ties to, what I do now at L. It's funny because I almost feel like the two things that I gave you of like, here's the motivation. I'm like, oh yeah, that tracks just so much. Everything that I do in my day now. Of course, I'm at like yet another company, building something that I think is gonna, that I think the world needs, and like working with people to make that happen. And then also like trying to see how we can change the startup ecosystem as a whole. Um, but yeah, so education in my life, I think really came from my parents and my family. So my mom and my dad grew up in China during the Cultural Revolution, which was a time of great civil upheaval in China. And the impact that it had on both of them was that they actually didn't get schooling for most of their lives. So my dad's formal schooling started at 12 years old. His parents, both of his parents and his older siblings were sent to labor camps. And so at age 12, he became responsible for caring and feeding and somehow providing for himself and all of his younger siblings. So you can imagine at age 12, like what kind of responsibility that is. So he went out, he started figuring out how to try to make some money, fix people's watches, sell fish, whatever was needed, to kind of get income. He became the like house chef. So he was really caring for his younger siblings at a very, very young age. But he always missed the opportunity to go to school. And so my dad would do and he did these crazy things like he would try to teach himself math out of textbooks.
Hmm.
He tried to he actually taught himself English from smuggled books out of the Soviet Union. So try to imagine like learning English from like Anna Karenina. Like, you're trying, like that's how you learn English.
And I've tried
It's
to
totally
teach myself
bonkers.
some basic Chinese, and the languages are just very, very, very different.
They're so different. They're so different. It's like it's not as though he's trying to learn English from like a basic primer. It's like, no, 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 we're going to take this really advanced, complex novel, and
Wow.
that's how you're going to try to teach yourself English. So just extremely, extremely motivated by this feeling of losing the opportunity of education. And so my dad has these crazy stories about how he devised these systems where he set up a mirror so that he could watch the pot of rice to see when it started to boil while he was reading the textbook so that he could like just create like figuring out how to multitask, right? So like he like that's just how driven he was to try to figure out how to do this. And so, yeah, my dad self-taught a lot in life. And then when he was finally able to actually go back to school in his 20s. So a really big gap in education before school became an option for him again. And so he actually ended up coming to, he became an international student. He came to college here in the States in San Francisco. So he went to San Francisco State and got his computer science degree there. And he was, significantly older than all the other students at that time. But and then my mom and my dad both went on to get their masters here in the US and stay here. But the point is that growing up, education was seen as it was such a paramount value in our household. And it was like school wasn't something that you complained about having to go to. School was an absolute privilege. You know, my dad was like, my parents would say to me all the time, like, I mean, we would have given an arm and a leg just to have the opportunity to sit in the back of a classroom. And so when that's your framing that you grew up with as a kid, you have a very different view on what education um, is and like what it can do for you. So I was this kid who like absolutely loved school growing up. Education was a huge, huge thing in our household, and it was like a source of joy. You know, I'd come home from school and my mom and dad would ask me, "What did you learn at school today?" And they were genuinely curious because they're like, "Wow, that's cool that you're learning about biology. We never got to learn about any of that stuff. What did you learn?" You know, they were genuinely like super thirsty to hear what I had learned at school, and they had such a joy for learning. When I started taking calculus classes, my dad was like, "Can I borrow your textbook after you're done? Like, I've never really learned calculus, and I would really love to like learn it." And he would be trying to teach himself calculus out of my textbook, and he'd be like, "Amelia, here's what I learned today. I think it works this way." And I'd be like, "No, Dad, that's not quite how limits work. Like they work this other way." You know, so imagine um, so there was a real sense of actually loving learning like in our household. It really wasn't about kind of the grades or getting, you know, certain marks or certain achievements. So anyway, that I think is a big reason why I ended up this is now the second time that I've worked in ed tech. So there's multiple companies I worked at in education technology. Just because I mean, I do think, you know, it speaks to something in me of just like what kinds of opportunities it unlocks for you. And I do think that that comes from that place in my life.
And it also, like, it tracks to, you know, you started your career thinking you would go into academia and found your
Yes.
way to ed tech, right? With, of course, many stops along the way, and we'll have a whole bunch of links in the show notes so people can follow along on the journey on the pieces we won't be able to get into. But what I'm hearing is this very clear through line, not just of your purpose and your motivations, but of your like value system and how learning, education, not for just the outcome, just the achievement, is just such a strong piece of who you are as a person and as a leader. If if
Yeah.
you met your academic self, like your student self thinking, I'm going to teach, I'm going to do research, I'm going to teach, this will be my life. If you met her today as your founder self, what do you think would surprise her the most about where you are?
Oh my gosh, I think so much. But yeah, to your point, like my initial dream was so I studied physics when I was in undergrad at Harvard, and my goal at that time was to be a physics professor, you know? So like to your point, right? I idolized teachers. I thought teachers were just some of the coolest people in the world. And so I wanted to be a teacher. And then I figured like professor seemed to be like the highest level of teacher. I was like, well, if I'm going to be a teacher, I want to be like the best teacher, right? So it's like I think
Of
professors are
course.
like the highest teachers. So that was the reasoning behind me deciding that I was going to be a physics professor. Um, I think a lot would be really surprising to her. I think probably just that I would be in business at all. I think it would have been a total shock to like me, um, freshman year in college me, to hear that I would go to business school someday. I'd be like, that what? What? Like that would have been so far off from my mind. I would have been like, no, 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 you have the wrong person. Like, what? I don't like um let's see. That would have been very surprising. I think just probably that I would be in technology, honestly,
Hmm.
because growing up, so both of my parents were software engineers. And they worked in really big tech companies. Think HP, think these big telecom companies like Alcatel, which most consumers I don't think are super familiar with. But um, and they used to tell me growing up, Amelia, don't ever go work in technology. They said, don't be like us. Don't be a cog in a machine. You know, go do something of your own. And so that was my conception of technology growing up. Like they actively discouraged me from like working in tech. They're like, no, 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 go do something where you have like control over your destiny. Don't
You
be, in this giant cubicle farm.
and you
So
did
it's
both.
funny.
You worked in technology, but you did it your way.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say, so I ended up working in technology in an extremely different context from what they imagined. So I do like to think I have yeah, definitely haven't ended up in cubicle farm, at least not yet. Um, but that would be quite
Good.
surprising to me.
That would be surprising to me as someone who knows you at this moment in time. I'd be like, "What? How did she get there?" Well, let's pick
Yeah.
up. Okay, so let's go to 2018 when you're founding Honeycomb. You've worked in tech for a bit. You've moved out of this physics professor dream into this new era of your journey. And you've described building Honeycomb at the intersection of AI and kids. You said it felt like handling two nuclear topics. But then as generative AI matured, you all shifted away just from this pure curation model. And then you went viral on TikTok and it crashed your servers because people were generating like a photo on Honeycomb like every second. And millions of parents showed up to use the product, to rave about it, to tell it with their friend. You've called that moment before exhilarating, exhausting, and stressful. Let's pick up right there. Everyone has these dreams of going viral, but you actually made the most out of it and made it not just a blip or a spike. You made it into scale. How did you approach that?
Honestly, it's funny. I think back to a good founder friend of mine who, um, so she runs a consumer app that's quite large, has many, many millions of users. And she once used this for, I think I was asking her about, oh, like, how did you like grow at the big, whatever. I was asking some question about growth. And she was like, Amelia, we were like the 6 year overnight success. Where she's like, it seems like this big thing where I think the App Store featured them as app of the day, and it kind of looked that was the moment that they got all these downloads. But the truth was that she's like behind the scenes, we toiled for years and years and years, and there's actually like so much that led up to that moment. So I think of that phrase like the 6 year overnight success. I do feel a little bit that way, about us going viral on TikTok. Like it looks so random in the moment, but really I give a lot of credit like to my co-founder and to the team. We spent a hell of a lot of time thinking about like what was the best way to grow. We tried so much stuff that did not work, tried many, many things. There's just an endless list of like stuff to try. And most of the time it doesn't work. And you just keep going down the list because, that's sort of how it goes with startups. We had a thesis that social was generally a good channel for us and that we should be investing in it more than we were. So there was that. Um, and we had been investing in it very intensely for months, many months, with the theory that we thought there was viral potential. But like, yeah, we had spent at that point a good 8 months learning how to consistently go viral, actually. Like, we were actually pretty good at that point already at organic social media. We had amassed, I think, over 100,000 followers at that point, um, either on TikTok or Instagram or both. I kind of forget exactly where our accounts were. And they had been zero, but zero followers at the beginning of the year. So we'd made like massive, massive progress. And so our knowledge of social media was just a lot higher. And actually, that viral moment, it didn't happen right away. We released the feature in September, at the end of September. We were quite sure that it had viral potential. And so the feature, to recap for people, was at that time, we were a private family photo album. Honeycomb was very, very, and our customers were first time, mostly millennial moms. And so, like one tagline that people used for us, which I really loved, was it's like Instagram for baby spam. So I don't remember which one of our users came up with that, but I really liked it. No, they said it's private Instagram for baby spam. So the idea was that it was default private versus default public, like other social media platforms. It was really optimized for new parents, and family and like close friends. Um, and we had seen, so we were really focused on creating a very curated and beautiful, sort of memory saving experience. But one of the problems with building a default private social network is your viral factor is low, right? Because literally people aren't going to tell even if they love your product, they're like, great, I told my family and my best friends about it and I'm done. And you're like, yeah, can you
Right.
tell other people that you really love us too? And they're like, but I'm not going to invite them to my group because my group is private, not public. So there was this cap on, like, we couldn't just rely on our customers to help us grow because honestly, a lot of our customers were kind of default private people. That's why they came to us, is because they're not the kind of people that are like blasting out on Twitter. I freaking, like every detail about their lives. Um, so that was why we started looking for other avenues of growth, and we noticed that there was that was a time when Lenza was going really viral. So for people who don't know how many people remember Lenza, but or recall, but so Lenza was doing generation of AI avatars for like your Twitter like profile picture or
Oh, yeah, it was
whatever.
all over
Yeah.
Twitter. Some people were putting them on LinkedIn and
Yep.
getting
Exactly.
attention because it stood out so much, especially there.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. And then you were starting to see these other photo generation apps go viral. There were ones for selfies for sure. So avatars, selfies, celebrities, as people were making images of the Pope, right? Or like Tom Cruise or whatever, Will Smith. Um, and then people were also starting to do them for pets. So there were portrait generators. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
I
yeah. And I remember
forgot about that moment.
Yeah, and I remember thinking to myself, we're starting to hit all the major categories of photography. Like if you just think about photos in general, what are the big categories of photography? There's self-portraits, selfies. There's like public figures. Like there's pets. And then like there's landscapes. So we're like, okay, cool. Someone else is gonna do landscapes or like nature or whatever. We're like, there's a really big freaking obvious one that's missing, which is like, what about actually the people who you love? Like if you open up any person's random, and especially any parent's phone and you click on the photos app, like what is 90% of what's in there? You
Oh, yeah.
know? So just like content,
Guilty.
we're like, yeah. Yeah. And we're like, if you just connect the dots, like someone is going to also offer this for this category of photos. No one has gotten to it yet. No one has like either they might not be thinking about it or they don't want to like touch it because you have to like think about all these safety guidelines and stuff. Anything that has like photos of kids, you want to make sure it doesn't generate anything inappropriate. And we're like, we think we're one of the very first people to see that there's potential here, that people are going to want this, and that it can be really fun. We're like, if, and so we were coming up with all these crazy ideas of like, I think like there were like there was stuff around Star Wars going on at the time. We were like, create like a Star Wars themed like portrait of your kid where they've like got
I
like a
remember that
lightsaber.
one.
Yes.
I remember
Yeah,
seeing
that
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 one,
was
and
very
it was like
popular.
little toddlers with the lightsabers.
That was a very popular category. Our Star Wars portraits were very, that was one of the most popular categories. We also had anyway, so yeah, we created this mostly as a growth hack. We thought that was what it
Mm.
was going to be, was like a viral growth hack. And it did, but yeah, we released the feature and then nothing happened for like a month and then
Hmm.
it went viral. Um, so
I
I
I love that framing of this 6-year overnight success, not just because it's a useful, like, phrase, it literally maps to the timeline of Honeycomb for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And
true.
in the meantime, while you're figuring all of this out, right? You're having these growth hacks, this product success, this stickiness that even as you talk about it, what I hear is that you knew this customer base. You knew that somebody was going to launch this feature.
Yeah.
You knew who these people were. Why not you? And while all of this is happening, you're also starting a nonprofit at the same time. VC backed moms kind of came up around the same time while you're doing all these hard, interesting, exciting founder moments. Tell us about that. Like the origin story I know starts with you and your co-founder and a need and a problem that you were facing. But I'd love to hear more about like how did you know it would be a yes and not an either or to do both? Not that
Um,
hard.
that's so interesting. That's so interesting. And like, I mean, I'm also genuinely personally curious about, you know, your version of this story too. I know that's not what this is about. But the yes and felt so obvious to me. Like, I don't think there was ever a moment where we considered that it was a choice. I don't I don't know how much of that was just I don't know how much of that is probably m- me basing myself on me. Like I was like, well, of course, like I'm not gonna make that choice. I wanted, so I also like, at the time I was like, well, I want kids too. Like, obviously, I'm not giving up like one of those dreams. Yeah, of course, this is an and. It's just about figuring out how to do it. So I don't know how much of it was just based on that. I do think there's also a little bit of I don't know. I think the people who end up becoming founders, for whatever reason, I think we're kind of yes and people. Like I don't think we like having to settle. We don't like having to pick. We're just like, we just want all of those things.
Why
We're
not
just
all
gonna
of
do
it?
all of those things. Yeah.
And
Um,
if it doesn't exist, we'll just build it.
yeah,
That's fine. That's what
exactly.
we
Yeah.
do. We build things.
Exactly. I know. That's so our personality. And then I think part of it at that time, if I'm really honest, I don't think we realized how unusual it was. So some of it was a little bit of, it's easier to break a glass ceiling that you don't know is there, right? We really didn't realize that it was that unusual. We didn't know until we started trying to find other women who had had kids while also running venture-backed companies. Um, like I had spent at this point, I mean, I'm coming up on 15 years working in the startup tech ecosystem out here in Silicon Valley, and like I've built a pretty good network over that time. And my co-founder had worked at Google and Meta, and so she had the big tech network. And I was like, well, obviously, between our networks, it's going to be trivial for us. Like, no problem.
Well,
It was just very much, honestly, it was shock at how hard it was to one, find these people. So we were trying to write our own maternity leave policy. And we're like, oh, let's go ask other people who've done this before. Like, how do they write their own maternity leave policy? What are, like, can they share drafts with us? You know? And like, it was just so hard to find anybody. We're asking like second, third, fourth degree, like intro. I mean, we are scraping the ends of the earth to find these intros, and I just remember thinking to myself, what is going to happen to all the other female founders who are in our shoes? Because 86% of women in the United States become mothers. So this is not some crazy niche thing. In fact, like, I remember thinking, I was like, so like a bunch of female founders, like the majority of female founders are going to walk the same path. Like, what are they all supposed to go through this crazy journey that we've been going through this, past month or two. And I remember just searching like hell for some community like VC-backed moms, which I just thought had to be out there because I was like, well, we're in Silicon Valley. There's a founder group for everything. There's a founder group for everything. You could have some super niche, weird interest in some obscure watch brand, and there will be like a founder club for people who are into those watches. Like, and then on the flip
wonderful.
side, yeah, and then on the flip side, you go on Facebook and there's 10 million mom groups. There's a mom group for every possible niche, everything. And so I was like, how has no one made the intersection of these two things? Like that just really blew my mind. I was like, neither of these is a radical um like concept. So I think there was a part of me that really felt like this thing has to exist. This is crazy. Like, how does this not already exist? And also, like, dang it, we need it. I was like,
Yeah.
we need this community. Um, because neither of us had kids at the time, and I was like, well, we're gonna be the blind leading the blind. So, we really have to find these women.
Let's at least find some people for us. No, and it's super interesting because to your point, it seems like this kind of obvious overlap, right, of female founders, moms, all of that. Like, it seems like a
No, it should seem
no-brainer
that
in this
crazy.
context, but at the same time, it just needed that, like, spark of a person to go back to kind of, like, your motivation to build it,
Yeah.
to say, "This is a
Yeah.
container for it, and let's see, let's test, let's learn, let's see what's needed, and let it grow." And now it's at what? Like, over 500 members with
Yes.
collectively
Over
$5
$5
billion.
billion of venture funding raised, an average of 10 million per member. Yeah. 100% of our members have raised institutional capital. It's mind blowing. And in our criteria, has like remained basically identical since the founding of the company. It's female founders, and we at any stage of motherhood. So we do. That was something that we actually deliberately defined at the beginning.
Mhm.
You can have kids, you could be pregnant, you could be fertility planning. You can also, we have a category of like, it's in the plan someday. And I just want to figure out how this works. Because my co-founder and I were also very infuriated when we would try to join some of these mom groups for advice. And they'd be like, oh, but have your kid, do you have kids yet? And she'd be like, well, no, I'm expecting. And it's okay, no, you can't join yet. And she was like, what? I can't like have questions until the human has emerged from me. She's like, I have questions now. I have questions
You
now.
have
And
to wait until you're in a panic mode, Googling at 3 a.m.,
I
then you can
know.
have information. That's
Exactly.
that's that's gonna allow it.
I was like, oh, let's wait until you're in the most stressful, most sleep deprived part. And that's when like you can ask for help. And so we found that very infuriating. And so we specifically made the group like, no, you can join
I love
before.
that. And
Which
it's
yeah,
that's
is a
there's that access
disappointment.
again, saying like, no, like not just am I gonna make sure that there's space for what I need, for my plan, for my building my own way, but also saying, and who else can I bring in? How can I leave the door open for other folks who might need this or something like it,
Yeah.
right?
I was saying that being said, the vast majority of our members have kids. So I would say like 90% plus of our members have kids. But it is like very, very important to me that we have defined the criteria in that way. And we do have members who are like, and I also think like any parent knows like the journey is complicated, or it can be really complicated, right? And like people can have really, really complicated paths on their journey to becoming a parent or a mother. And so, yeah, we have people there who are in all stages of planning and just like figuring things out, and just having other people with you on that journey is invaluable.
And simultaneously also on various stages and very different founder journeys, right? So there's this combination of variance in there that creates a wealth of different data points, different solutions, different ideas. It's really cool to see and to be a part of. So Honeycomb is growing too, right? You've got VC backed moms is running, you've got this side project turned full blown nonprofit. Your startup is doing well. You've raised millions at this point in time. You've got investors from Bling Capital, Charles from Precursor. The product is being featured in like New York Times, little publications like TechCrunch, things like that. Also, parents.com. How did you know? Like, really know in your soul, not just like optimism and confidence and faith, but how did you know that you are on the path to an exit soon?
I don't think we did. It's like it's the honest answer. It was it was not something that was writ in our plans. And actually I would say that's probably a piece of advice that I wish I had been given earlier. was um I think I actually think that like every founder CEO should I feel like there should be there should be coursework somewhere like training on thinking about like exit paths. It's just not, you're so consumed, especially at the beginning, on just getting things up and running. Then you're just focused on running the thing. And I kind of found that for me, when we were in really the thick of navigating M&A, I was like, wow, I really wish that I had like learned more of this stuff earlier when I wasn't in a super intense time pressure environment where I'm being asked to make a decision within 48 hours.
Like thinking about that, let's dig into that because you knew about M&A, you knew
Yeah.
about exits.
Yes.
How it sounds like you didn't feel as prepared as you wished you
Yeah.
could have been
Right.
with
Exactly.
hindsight, right? Obviously, at this point, you've done it, so you know more.
Yeah.
If you having gone through an acquisition, if you built another startup again in the future, what's something you would have done differently to prepare for it?
Okay. Um, I During this process, I actually spoke to a founder friend who had also gone through an exit, and as I was asking her about her M&A process, and I said, "How long had you been thinking about um, who would be, potential acquirers?" And she said, "Oh, from day one." I was like, "What?" And it turned out that in her prior life, she had worked in BD and partnerships. And so she was like, she's like, yeah, I've been on the other side. Like, I actually really knew about this world. And so when I started the company, I already knew at the very beginning that it would be smart to strategically think about like who would be people who maybe at the beginning they start out as enterprise customers for us, but eventually that relationship becomes a potential acquirer. And I was like, wow. Like, I was so shocked. She was going to say like 6 months or something, you know? Um, but
Day
like,
0.
yeah, she's like, no, 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 I've been thinking about this since the beginning. I was like, oh my gosh, and there's some truth to that because, so, what ended up happening was like our our technology, so our team was acquired by Ello. Our technology was acquired by another company, and that other company was a company that we had actually been working with on a business deal. So they were like, again, a potential enterprise client, and they were very interested in licensing our technology at the time. We were at the time the best in the market at doing any kind of image generation that had to do with kids. So we had talked to a lot of brand names that I think probably your listeners would recognize. It might be where you order your holiday cards from, that kind of those kinds of places. And they had said to us that we'd come in, we'd shown our technology and demoed, and we had gotten a lot of feedback that we've looked at a lot of companies because we're very interested in AI, and you guys are the best. So we'd heard it enough times to believe that it was true. Um, and yeah, like that ended up turning into a technology acquisition. And so, I was like, wow, I could have been really like smart and actually mapped that out like my friend. I could have predicted that. Like these things don't have to be as just spontaneous as it might as it, as it felt. So that is definitely something that I recommend to every founder. I almost think of it as being like in high school, and I it's like I wish that they had taught us personal finances. And so I'm like, man, there's so many like life skills. That are like, yeah, you should really just that should just really be like a class in school. I think this is one, and because it's not going to be something that is like recommended to you, I think you kind of have to do it on your own. Is way before you think you're ever going to end up in those conversations, just go like educate yourself on what M&A paths exist. Talk to founders who've gone through it. Ask them what their experience is like. You'll start to get a sense of like, these are the possible paths, these are the possible these are some of the patterns. These are some of the questions to think about really early on so that if and when you have to pull out that playbook, you at least freaking have your playbook and your notes, and you're not starting from scratch. You're like, okay, cool. I researched this beforehand. Um,
Well, and
yeah,
I think we don't hear a lot about the details of split acquisitions or things like that. And
yeah.
so I'm curious, the technology's acquired, yay, happy.
Thank you.
Why
Yeah.
Ello for the team, right? As you think about
Oh,
the team
yeah.
joining Ello, that's a different set of considerations, I would imagine, than just purely the tech and not the people. So, what were some
Yes.
of the important questions that you asked when thinking about you and your team becoming a part of another company?
There was a lot, I think, about Ello that felt like such a great fit. Um, a lot of what I had seen, a lot of what I'd seen go wrong in acquisitions from my previous life working in startups. So I'd seen my partner had also gone through an acquisition. So the startup that he was at was acquired by a larger company. So I gotten to see what his experience was like. I'd also worked at companies like Udacity that acquired companies. And so I also got to see, okay, what is that like? And I'd also just heard enough stories that I I think that the merging of two cultures is such a big factor in how that's going to go. And I really wanted to feel very confident that not only was it going to be a good deal overall just to do it, I really wanted it to feel like this is going to be a great culture fit. Both in terms of, I think that is how I don't think either the acquirer or the acquired company is excited about a future where there's like a, you know, what is it? It's like when you have a limb and then like your body's like rejecting the limb or
Yeah.
whatever. I was like, I don't think anybody wants that outcome, but also just really, I just wanted, I wanted us to enjoy our jobs every day. I was like, I want us to be excited about going to work. And so that was a really big part of it. We knew the team at Ello. So again, I think this goes back to the same like advice that I, would give other founders. So much is actually going to depend on the relationship that you have with the other side. And it's not, your chances are so much lower if it's like the first time that you're meeting. If you're going into M&A and it's like, hey, this is the first time we're having conversations, um, it's just so much. It's like the difference between hiring somebody that comes referred from someone within your team versus somebody that's like a cold application. Like when someone on your team is like, I already know them and person is great, there is so much like default trust that comes with that makes it so much easier to make that hiring decision. It's kind of the same thing with any kind of business deal or acquisition in general. And so that was a huge part of it, was that I had a lot of trust in that. I knew the All team was going to be a great group of humans. I knew it was going to be a great culture. I knew that was going to be a really good culture fit with our team. It didn't hurt for sure that like there were also a lot of larger mission alignment pieces. There were very few companies at the time. There's more now, but there were very few companies at the time that were really focused on working at the intersection of really like generative AI and families and kids. That was like not a common thing at that time. Like tons of
Too
B2B SaaS
scary.
company.
Too
Yeah,
scary for a
exactly.
lot of people.
Yeah, and consumer too. So it's like consumer, like families and kids, generative AI. There are very, very few companies working in that space. And and deeply interested in the technology side of it. So like and our team, frankly, and I, like, just frankly, selfishly, personally, I was like, that's what's really interesting. I'm not really interested in kind of compromising there. There's a ton of really big family brands, very focused on families and kids that are maybe sort of interested in AI, but that's not like a core piece of what they're doing. They're maybe just thinking of it as like, how do we like adapt AI into our product? How do we like move with this giant technological shift? But it's not the absolute beating heart of what they're trying to build. Um, and that mattered to me. I was like, I'm fundamentally kind of a tech nerd. And so I was like, I want to be working on like the technology. Like I want to be working at a company where that is core to the company and the product because yeah. So there were a lot of pieces. It was like, yes, all the mission fit parts were there. But then the culture fit piece and the trust with the team was the trust with the leadership team and the founders was absolutely crucial.
Okay, so it's November 2024, right? And the acquisition has gone through. The world knows it's no longer a thing you're only talking about in the need to know circles and all of that. What changed either in like your calendar, or your energy, even your identity in that like week after all of a sudden everyone knows that you're an exited CEO?
Um, we actually didn't announce it until I think December. So the deal was done in November, but we like kind of worked out and time. And we were like, all right, let's like be on the same page about when we're sharing this with, because the LO team was also going to announce it from their end too. And so we didn't announce until December. Um, Honestly, I don't think that in the immediate aftermath there was a whole bunch of time to process. It was pretty intense. And there was a lot of work that had to get done. So if I'm really honest, I think uh yeah, my co-founder was like, "How do you feel?" And I was like, "I don't have time to have feelings right now." I was like, "I'll have my feelings later. I'll like ask me in a couple months. We have time to have feelings. I don't have time to have feelings right now." No, but seriously, so I don't think a ton changed for me in the immediate moment because it was just like there's just a lot to get done. The closest that I can compare it to is like a really, really like fast moving fundraise process. If a founder has been through that, where if it's like if you're really kind of in that moment where it's like you are on either on a phone or email, like essentially 24/7. Um, and that's all you're doing. Is there's a ton of communication, a ton of stuff to take care of, and a ton of stuff is very like time sensitive. Um, yeah, that was yeah. So I would say that the busiest few times of the entire like the company journey were like right at the beginning and right at the end, like were sort of similar in intensity in that way. Um, and then I don't think it was until like probably like 2 or 3 months, I would say, into like being a full-time employee at Elo that I felt like I had space to even be like, oh yeah, so it's different about life now. Um, I think the biggest things are um you take you appreciate so much more, like 100 times more all these things that were true when I was like an employee before, but you kind of take it for granted when you're an employee, and then you get used to being a founder and you like forget what it was like to be an employee, and
You
then you're an
forget you
employee
don't
again.
have to be responsible for everything all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I was like, wow, actually, this is really cool that like someone else it's someone else's job to worry about like where all our paychecks come from. Like that's wow. Like, I mean, you just take it for granted when you're an employee. You don't. Yeah. Um,
Negotiating insurance.
yeah.
Mm.
I was like, oh, I can just be the person that chooses which insurance plan to sign up for instead of having to choose which insurance plans we offer and make sure that they're good and hope that they're not totally shitty. And um, Yeah, just the amount of extra brain space that I have on weekends. Um, when you're running your company full time, at least for me, it was amazing to me. It was practically the first thing I thought of when I woke up, and it would be like the last thing I thought of at night before I went to bed. And it was so and that was just involuntary, you know. It was just involuntary. You're just thinking about it all the time. And it's not always really bad. Sometimes I was like, sometimes I was really excited, you know, to be thinking about it all the time. And I don't necessarily say it as a complaint. It's just a truth, you know.
You're
And
in it.
so
It's a
that's
part of
different.
you.
Yeah.
It's a part of you. I mean, I remember for me, I didn't realize that I had this muscle memory on my phone to just, like, in, like, liminal spaces, like, if I'm waiting for, I don't know, waiting to order at a restaurant or, waiting
Yeah.
for my partner to come sit down for dinner, I would pick up my phone and just go to the admin dashboard and check our stats. It took me
Oh
like, I had to
gosh.
break that habit because it was just
Oh
muscle memory. I
gosh.
didn't think about it. It was just, like, a thing I did. And I realized that there were a lot of those things that, to your point, I was always thinking about it, and most of the time it was great. It's because I loved it and I wanted to think
Yeah.
about it. But
Yeah.
then after that fact, I was like, "Oh, wait," to your point, that more open brain space, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think just knowing that, like, honestly, I think it was, you know, VC backed moms it started out as this like Slack group, you know, that had like less than a dozen people in it when we started in 2021, and it had really grown over time. Um, at the time that we were selling the company, we had it wasn't yet the case that I think we had like fully become we hadn't yet become like a full-blown nonprofit. That actually didn't happen during like the lifetime of the company. It was starting to happen right around the time that the sale was happening. So we had been looking for pro bono counsel for quite some time to see if anybody would help us incorporate. Because we had gotten to the point where like I just knew that I didn't want this to just be a Slack group. I wanted it to be like an institution that was around for generations, and that required that that required a whole bunch of things. It required the ability for us to accrue to step up our sponsorships and build the kind of financial resources and model that were going to let us be sustained over time and sort of achieve some of these larger goals that we had in mind for the organization. So yeah, and then just kind of by coincidental timing, it took months, you know, to go through the incorporation, to become a nonprofit, to get 501(c)(3) status, and that all started happening like right around the time that the sale was happening. So yeah, so it's actually a relatively new thing that we are like a full-blown nonprofit. I'm so proud to be able to say that. I just love that. I love how far the group has come. So that was also really cool to me was like frankly, um, I don't need to tell you this. There's just a lot less free time, you know, when you're like running a full-time venture-backed company. There's a lot of like hobbies that I had that fell by the wayside and went on pause and things like that. And I was like really excited to I was like, oh, I have time to have a hobby again. And I can choose if I want for my hobby to be this group, to be this community, to be this thing. You know, other people cook, other people play a sport, whatever, you know, like this is what I want to do. So that was cool.
As we get close to the end, what's a myth about exits that you'd like to see retired?
Oh, that's a good one. Mm. I think the really big one is that like they happen spontaneously. Like that was such a wake up moment for me talking to my friend who's like, "Oh, I've been planning this out for years." I was like, "God, I wish I'd thought of that." Like, um, not that, and I think there's this feeling that somehow as a venture back founder, you're like, I mean, you're always shooting for the moon. So you're almost like, "Ugh, I don't want to like jinx myself by thinking about an exit. So I do think there's a little bit of that feeling and that attitude, but I would really encourage people to think of it as just like an education that you want to have. You don't necessarily have to use it, and you can choose like when you decide, if and when you ever decide, to use that knowledge, but you probably do want to feel like if you are in a situation where you decide that you want to move forward, that you're not just educating yourself about it on the spot, you know. Um, like we don't do that with fundraising. I think people wouldn't feel weird at all about going out and like trying to educate themselves on the fundraising process and how that works so that you can make sure that you have a good fundraising process. And I don't know. So um I yeah, I think of it as I guess I think of it as like it should be like a hygiene area of knowledge that like any first time founder CEO feels like
I mean,
they are allowed to
that's
educate
the
themselves
job,
on.
is to grow something to an exit. I mean,
Yeah, that's right. And there's
that's the
more than one way
job,
to
and
exit.
so it's really interesting that you point that out. I mean, how many I bet we could look right now and see how many programs are teaching fundraising strategy
Yeah,
and mechanics and things like that, but for some reason, we assume there's that founders will just know this magical moment at which they should get very deeply versed in the M&A
yeah,
process and details. But
yeah,
just like that 6-year overnight success, you won't realize you're there until you're there, probably. And there'll be lots of smaller moments that lead up to that where you could be building that acumen and building out your own kind of
absolutely.
fluency. That's a huge takeaway. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Thank you so much for being here. This was such a treat. Where can people find you on the internet? Connect with you, stay in touch with you in your journey, get in touch with VC backed moms. Let us know.
Um, so definitely like, I mean, you can definitely find out whatever I'm working on LinkedIn, either related to Elo or to VC backed moms. Let's see. Yeah, we're I'm hiring. We're hiring right now at Elo. So, if working in the intersection of ed tech and cutting edge AI is appealing, check out. Go follow me because I'll be posting if there are positions that are open.
Wonderful.
And then for VC backed moms, it's our find us at vcbackmoms.com. Share it. I think that's a big one for me. Just let people know that it exists. That's my number one ask for people. There are so I the thing I always My worst nightmare is somebody being out there who was in the shoes that we were in, just not even knowing that this community exists, because I would have died to like, have this community and join it. So we just want people to know that it does exist, and that they can join and that it's free. And it's just a really wonderful group of humans, including yourself. So,
Well,
yeah.
thank you. Well, and we'll have all of those links linked easily in the show notes, so people don't even have to think to type; they can just click away. And again, thank you so much. I know that talking about exits is something that is also a bit mythologized. So thanks for breaking it down and being human and being real and being practical about it. And I love seeing how your purpose and your motivations have taken you so far. And I know it's only going to go someplace cool from here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. I've been looking forward to it.
Thanks for tuning in to Founded on Purpose, a Renew Venture Capital podcast. Founded on Purpose is produced and hosted by me, Katie McBratney. For more conversations like this one, you can find all our episodes on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like this episode, give us a 5-star rating. Each one helps us reach more people who believe in changing the world through purposeful, profitable business. Until next time, be well.